One of Montreal's darkest days, January 9th, 1927. G'day guys, how's it going? My name is AussieTash. We're back with another reaction video from Discovery Montreal. Guys, if you haven't seen this channel, go and check it out. It has some great original Canadian content. Fantastic channel. Really looking forward to watching this video. Got a feeling it's going to be a bit of a tearjerker. But before we do, please to make sure to jump on, hit that subscribe button. That would really help me out. Okay, let's go with this one. One of Montreal's darkest days, January 9th, 1927. Let's go.
What about stuff related to film? Montreal's famous for it.
In June 1896, the former Robillard building on St. Laurent Boulevard held the first ever film projection screening in North America.
Wow.
In 1906, there was a guy from Montreal who established the first dedicated movie theater.
Wow.
Les années 1920 sont synonymes de l'âge d'or du cinéma à Montréal. Et le cinéma va suivre l'expansion démographique des Montréalais, vers le nord avec la rue Saint-Denis, mais aussi vers l'est, la rue Sainte-Catherine. Bref, les cinémas suivent les gens.
The 1920s saw a series of social reform campaigns involving children. There had been debate over whether or not unaccompanied children should be allowed to go to movie theaters. This debate was reignited after one fateful incident that would shake up the city of Montreal.
Oh my God.
Montreal, where firemen battled with a series of disastrous blazes during the holiday weekend.
What's
Montréal se
happening?
produit le 9 janvier 1927. Un drame dans le domaine du cinéma. L'incendie du Laurier Palace, situé au coin des rues Sainte-Catherine et Saint-Germain, dans l'est de la métropole.
On the afternoon of January 9th, 1927, a movie was showing in Montreal, Quebec. It was called Get 'Em Young.
Later, that title would seem like a tragic omen. The Laurier Palace Theatre on St. Catherine Street East was packed for the Sunday matinee.
Several adults attended the early afternoon showing. So did 250 children, most of whom didn't have adult supervision.
Oh no.
20 minutes into the show, fire broke out in the balcony. There was a stampede to the stairs. 78 children were killed.
Oh my God.
Most of them between the ages of 6 and 16.
I would just go on there to have a laugh. Probably even a silent video, like a silent movie, where you just laugh at them doing the actions and improvisations and stuff like that. And this happened? Oh my gosh. And look at the age of these children. 8 years old, 6 years old, 11 years old. 77 children, did they say, perished in this fire at this theatre? Oh my gosh.
They all came from the balcony section. And while this tragedy is largely forgotten outside of Montreal, it remains one of the darkest moments in the history of movie theaters.
77 children.
This is the story of the Laurier Palace Theatre.
It is a very sad fire. Oh my gosh.
The Laurier Palace Theatre was located on St. Catherine Street. It was originally used for French plays and only started showing movies in the mid-1920s.
C'est un cinéma qui existe depuis 1912. Et comme bien des endroits, c'était des cinémas de quartier, de plusieurs qui sont disparus. C'est un endroit que vous pouvez voir quand vous promenez dans l'est de Montréal, dans Hochelaga. C'est un bâtiment qu'on voit ici, c'est l'emplacement de l'ancien cinéma qu'on appelait le Laurier Palace, au 3215 Sainte-Catherine-Est. Ce qu'on voit à cet endroit-là, c'est la chapelle Marie-Reine des Cœurs qu'on a érigée en 1953 pour se rappeler de cette tragédie qui va marquer l'esprit collectif, l'imaginaire des gens pendant plusieurs générations.
The day is January 9th, 1927, in the early afternoon.
On sort des vacances de Noël et du jour de l'an. Les enfants ne sont pas retournés à l'école, alors les enfants vont aller au cinéma.
The audience numbered around 1,000, about 250 of which were children, most of them unaccompanied.
Alors les enfants se promenaient librement. Il y a des enfants qui sont rentrés dans le cinéma, même sans que les parents le sachent.
The floor section was largely occupied by adults, while the balcony seats were mostly occupied by children. A number of children also stood in the aisles.
January 9th, 1927 was René Roy's 14th birthday. And what better way to celebrate than go to the movies? René and his brother went up to sit in the balcony. Soon, the whole audience was in stitches over Stan Laurel's new comedy, Get 'Em Young.
In the middle of the movie, attendees suddenly heard someone yell, "Fire!" Smoke began filling the air and people started moving to the exits.
A fire broke out under the floor of the balcony. There were multiple theories as to the cause, but the most common one was a discarded cigarette. Whatever the case, when the smoke was noticed coming up through the floorboards, someone shouted, "Fire! Fire!" and the audience panicked, all rushing to the exits at once.
A cigarette, an unbuttered cigarette, looks to be the cause of this fire that kills 77 children in the matter of minutes. They're all there. It's the end of Christmas. They're going to have a laugh. No parents. They're feeling grown up. Having a laugh at a funny movie and not knowing what was going to happen. This is really hard, guys. Really, really hard.
A number of employees, apparently inadequately trained for such situations, focused on ripping up the floorboards in the balcony to put out the fire instead of guiding the patrons out of the building safely. But exposing the fire only made it larger, and it soon got out of control.
It's all wood too, isn't it?
The exit doors opened inward, so adults and children began crowding against them. The mass of humanity kept pushing upon those closest to the exit, preventing most people from escaping.
The stairs leading down from the balcony were sectioned off. One survivor later described them like this. It was one of those looping stairways. 5 steps, then a landing. Another 5 steps, another landing. But near the bottom, it narrowed. The stairs also turned at a 90-degree angle, which was especially dangerous in a situation like this.
When you're trying to run
because of how narrow
circles?
The area and the balcony exit was, the panicking mass of people were jammed together, unable to move.
God.
More smoke billowed throughout the building as the fire spread. Some reports said that some adults used their bulk to their advantage and trampled over the children at the balcony exit to escape.
No.
One man who got out of the building immediately went to the ticket window and demanded his money back instead of trying to help.
Is that true? Do you know of stories? Have you heard of things of people running over and trampling over the children to get out the door? This is just devastating, isn't it? These young children going to see a movie, going to have a laugh, feeling so alive, feeling so free, no parents around, no guardians around, and a fire, most likely started by a cigarette butt, causes all this destruction and death of 77 children. Oh my gosh.
For heroes, however, one of these was the projectionist. He kept the film going until no one was left on the balcony in order to try and keep everyone calm. Then, going down the stairway, he saw the horrific situation at the balcony exit, and forced open a window leading to the top of the entrance marquee, saving 26 children in the process.
It all happened so fast. The Gazette reported, a minute or two was sufficient to fill the stairway with a solid, suffocating, groaning, shrieking, and dying mass.
Oh my gosh.
By the time fire crews were in attendance, it was too late for many of the victims.
Wasn't it?
A fire department was across the street from the theater. Firefighters arrived quickly and saved those that they could.
Rescue efforts were described by the Montreal Gazette like this. Holes were chopped through the wooden stairs, directly under the jam of bodies. Another hole was made in a wall. Firemen formed in a human chain, and gradually undermined the mass by extracting those jammed. Nearly all pulled out of the stairway were dead.
Oh my god.
2 or 3 boys gave their names and died, crushed and mangled.
Okay. Those boys, those children, they would have been in so much pain. Told the people their names and then that was it. They were gone. Guys, leave a comment. Do you know much about this? Do you learn about this at school? Is there a day of remembrance for this to commemorate the death of the 77 children on the 9th of January 1927? This old footage, it's incredible to see, isn't it? 1920s, the cameras, the photos, it's amazing to see. It's telling a really, really sad story, but the footage is really, really cool.
Frail little bodies were laid in rows on the sidewalk.
Oh God.
Priests were on the scene, and the last rites were given to a few choking little ones who revived in the open air, then died.
No.
Nearby police stations and fire stations were converted into temporary morgues to accommodate the surprisingly high number of dead. In all, 78 children died, most of them between the ages of 6 and 16.
Look at all those names.
The Gazette described the scene at the morgue. There they lay, some with blood-stained faces, others smoke-blackened, most of them just pale, suffocated to death. Bright red mufflers, green sweaters, round-toed little shoes, tousled hair, upraised fists, chubby faces wrinkled and distorted into grimaces of the agony in which they died. The tragedy struck every street in the working-class Hochelaga neighborhood.
One of the youngest victims, a 6-year-old boy named Gaston Arpin, was the son of one of the firefighters who arrived at the scene.
Just look at their eyes.
And in another heartbreaking story, an off-duty police constable named Albert Boisseau had rushed to the scene, suspecting that his own children had gone to the theater.
Police constable Albert Boisseau was off duty, but he went to help. Rescuers were laying out the bodies of the children on the sidewalk.
He's gonna see them, isn't
Boisseau recognized his eldest daughter, Germaine, among the dead.
Oh my
Later,
God.
he went to the morgue and found his 2 other children, Roland and
3
Yvette.
children.
He lost his whole family.
He lost 3 children.
A twisted bit of irony in all this is that the name of the short being shown when the fire broke out was Get 'em Young, almost as if some unknown force was playing the sickest of all jokes.
That's really scary, isn't
The
it?
appalling news of the fire filled the front pages for months.
Oh my God.
La nouvelle va se répandre même dans les journaux étrangers, aux États-Unis entre autres.
Immediately, there was a search for who would be held responsible for the tragedy at the Laurier Palace Theater.
Yeah.
The owner of the theater was a Syrian man named Amin Lawand. Lawand and a few others were taken into custody. He was charged with allowing unaccompanied children under the age of 16 into the theater.
Okay.
There had actually been a law at the time forbidding unaccompanied children under the age of 16 to go to movie theaters.
Wow.
But many, if not most of the theaters in the area ignored the law.
Okay.
But this was not the first time Lawand had been caught breaking the law. He had previously been convicted a number of times for overcrowding his other theaters. What's more is that he also admitted that there had been fires in another of his theaters, and in a bowling alley he owned, and even in his own house.
What a bad man.
À la
A
suite
very
du
bad
drame,
man.
le service des incendies de la ville de Montréal va ordonner la fermeture temporaire de 31 des 58 salles qui sont considérées comme non sécuritaires.
On January 11th, funeral services were held in the Church of the Nativity near the theater for 39 of the victims. More than 50,000 people lined the streets to watch the funeral procession.
Thousands gathered at the parish church of La Nativité for the funeral 2 days later.
Oh, look at all these
Ça a
pictures.
frappé tellement les gens qu'il y a 50 000 personnes qui se présentent pour assister aux funérailles. Il y a 12 000 qui s'entassent à l'intérieur de l'église de la Nativité, alors qu'elle contient 3-4 000 places. Vous voyez les gens à l'extérieur, tout le long de la rue Ontario. Ça avait touché beaucoup les gens.
Oh my gosh.
Quelque temps après l'incident, Louis-Roméo Boudry écrit la chanson « Il fallait des anges au paradis » qui sera interprétée par Hercule Lavoie sur la tragédie.
There needs to be angels in heaven. This is not right, but is it? This is not right. It's your Oh.
Archbishop Georges Gauthier gave the eulogy. He wasted no time before calling for a law banning children from movie theaters. Fire safety measures were not enough. Children's moral safety was even more important.
Yeah.
I want this event to teach a lesson, the Archbishop said. The newspaper Le Devoir and l'Action Française, a nationalist group founded by Lionel Groux, called for a crackdown. A hideous evil is attacking our nation, particularly our children. It undermines and corrupts everything, the body, the brain, and the morals. This hideous evil is the movies, l'Action Française thundered.
Maybe.
And who is behind this evil but the Jews, it warned.
Okay.
Saying Quebec might have to become a fascist state like Italy to protect its children.
All right. I'm not sure
The
about
disaster
that.
at the Laurier Palace Theater had some major effects in Quebec. Some local clergy used the incident to continue their campaign against showing movies on Sundays. Some cities already had bans on Sunday movies before the Laurier Theater fire.
Okay.
Angry parents wanted change. They demanded that the theaters should be closed permanently.
The Quebec government had no choice but to act. In 1928, it passed a law banning all children under 16 from cinemas.
Okay.
Others were quick to point out that the problem was not about unaccompanied minors, but rather the preparedness of the theater and the responsibilities of both the owner and employees.
You can sort of understand why they were so tough and why laws had to be put in, and they had to be put in swiftly. 77 children had just died, and most of them were not accompanied by an adult. Yes, definitely, the theatre was not safe. The man that owned this theatre was a very bad man. He'd been implicated in doing other very suspicious stuff. There was some religious stuff mentioned in there. Guys, I'm not going to get into that. Please avoid commenting on that. That's not what this story is about. This story is about learning about what happened in Montreal on that day and remembering the children that were lost on that day.
It would also crack down on code violations of movie theaters to ensure that they were better prepared for dealing with emergencies. 2 months later, in mid-March, 3 Montreal theaters were forcibly closed. 5 were barred from special stage presentations due to unsafe stage conditions. And 22 were ordered to make improvements on safety features.
So they should
and
be
those
then.
numbers would continue to increase later in the month.
Les autorités, à ce moment-là, ont décidé de changer les lois. Loi de construction, loi d'opération.
The disaster also saw the adoption of outward opening panic bar doors
Inward
in
opening
most
doors.
theatres.
I don't
The
get
panic
that.
bar was something that had been invented many years before, but which hadn't at the time been widely adopted.
The Laurier Palace Theatre was said to be reopening about 6 months after the fire,
Wow.
but it seems like it never did.
Okay.
In the end, Amin Lawand was tried and convicted of manslaughter along with
Wow.
2 other employees from the Laurier Theatre in
Okay.
October 1927. He was sentenced to 2 years in jail, and the other 2 men were sentenced to 1 year.
2 years jail for manslaughter of
Laurier
77
Palace est
children.
devenu un mot qui a fait l'histoire
Wow.
de l'industrie du cinéma. C'est une chose que nous, dans l'industrie, on n'aime pas trop en parler parce que ça rappelle des choses qui sont pas exactement, qui se rapportent à l'industrie de entertainment.
The Laurier Theatre fire had one especially long-lasting effect. The ban on unaccompanied children under the age of 16 going to movie theaters remained in effect in Quebec all the way until 1961.
Wow.
When I saw how high the death toll was, I was surprised that I'd never heard of it. And while this tragedy is largely forgotten outside of Montreal, it remains one of the darkest moments in the history of movie theaters.
Wow.
The tragedy devastated Montreal and left an indelible mark on the soul of the city. Although the authorities and media forever referred to it as the Laurier Palace Theatre fire, for generations of Montrealers, it was given the nickname the saddest fire.
It definitely is the saddest fire, and there looks like there's a statue there with the names of all the children on it. That was really hard to watch, guys. That was a really sad story. Discover Montreal, again, it's a great channel, guys. He's got so much great content, and there's so much there to learn. I really enjoyed that story. It was hard to watch, but again, I'm learning so much about the positives and the negatives of the history of Canada. Guys, if you're new about that and you have anything to share, please jump on, leave a comment. If you like the video, smash the like button, and remember to subscribe. That really helps me out. Cheers from down under. Take care. Bye.